Jacob's Well looks like paradise. Clear as glass, calm on the surface. Families swim here, children laugh and splash in the pristine waters of the Texas Hill Country. But what's beneath the surface has claimed more lives than any other diving location in Texas, and when an underwater drone finally captured what's really down there, the footage sent shockwaves around the world. This isn't just another pretty swimming hole. This is a place where experienced divers vanish without explanation, where rescue teams refuse to go, where something waits in chambers so deep and twisted that even today's most advanced technology struggles to map them. Recently, a cutting-edge underwater drone equipped with military-grade cameras descended into Jacob's Well's forbidden depths. What it recorded in those pitch-black chambers defies explanation. The footage has been analyzed by marine biologists, cave diving experts, and underwater archaeologists. None of them can explain what they're seeing. The drone captured something that shouldn't exist, something that's been hiding in those depths for decades, maybe centuries, something that might finally explain why so many divers never came back. Hit that subscribe button now, because what you're about to see will change how you think about what's really lurking beneath our feet. Jacob's Well isn't just named after some random settler. This spring connects to one of the most significant stories in human history. Jacob, son of Isaac, grandson of Abraham, the patriarch who wrestled with God himself and lived to tell about it. According to local oral tradition passed down through generations, this is the actual well where Jacob watered his flocks over 4,000 years ago. Native American tribes considered it sacred long before European settlers arrived. They called it the spring that never runs dry. The well produces 170 million gallons of water annually, flowing from underground sources that geologists still can't fully trace. But here's what's disturbing. Ancient tribal legends warn that the spring demands payment for its gifts. They spoke of spirits in the deep chambers, entities that claimed offerings. Early settlers dismissed these as superstitious stories, until the drownings began. The first recorded death was in 1904, then more. Always experienced swimmers, always in the deeper chambers, always under circumstances that made no sense. The biblical Jacob wrestled with the divine being at Peniel. But what if something else followed him to this well? What if those tribal warnings weren't superstition but historical memory? What if the drone footage finally proves what the ancients tried to tell us? Jacob's Well plunges 140 feet straight down through solid limestone, creating a vertical maze of chambers and tunnels that twist deep into the Texas bedrock. But it's not the depth that makes it deadly, it's the design. The first chamber drops 30 feet. Most recreational divers stop here. It's beautiful, safe, manageable. Sunlight filters down, creating an underwater cathedral of dancing light. This is where families swim, where tour guides bring visitors. Then comes the second chamber. Narrower, darker, the walls close in. Experienced divers only. This is where things start to get twisted. The limestone formations create false passages, dead ends, confusing routes that can disorient even experts. But it's the third chamber where divers vanish. A narrow restriction barely wide enough for a human body, opening into a vast underground cavern that scientists believe extends for miles beneath the central Texas. No one has ever mapped its full extent. No one has ever returned from exploring its deepest passages. The water temperature drops dramatically between chambers. Thermoclines create visibility barriers. Silt gets disturbed easily, turning crystal-clear water into an impenetrable brown cloud in seconds. Divers lose their sense of direction. They can't find the way back up. And then there are the false floors. Limestone shelves that look solid but crumbled under pressure. sending divers plummeting into unmapped chambers below. Places where sound doesn't travel, where equipment malfunctions, where rescue becomes impossible. 1979. Two experienced divers, Don Dibble and Mark Brazier, entered the third chamber of Jacob's Well. They were experts. Hundreds of successful cave dives between them. They knew the dangers. They followed safety protocols. They never came back. Search teams spent weeks looking for them. Professional cave rescue divers from across the country volunteered. They found nothing. No bodies, no equipment, no trace whatsoever. It was as if the well had simply swallowed them whole. But that wasn't the end. More divers vanished over the years, always in the deeper chambers, always experienced professionals who knew what they were doing. The pattern was consistent and terrifying. Expert divers entering the lower chambers and simply disappearing without explanation. Then came the partial recoveries. Body parts found years later, miles away in underground river systems. Diving equipment discovered in chambers that supposedly had no connection to Jacob's Well. Gear that showed signs of damage that couldn't be explained by normal cave diving accidents. Local authorities quietly stopped permitting deep dives. Signs were posted warning recreational divers to stay in the first chamber only. But the disappearances had already earned Jacob's Well a reputation in the diving community. A reputation that attracted risk-takers and thrill-seekers from around the world. That's when someone decided to send down a drone instead of risking more human lives. If you're already getting chills, smash that like button and share this video, because we're just getting started. The drone wasn't some cheap consumer model. This was a military-grade underwater ROV equipped with 4K cameras, sonar mapping, water sample collection, and emergency retrieval systems. Built to explore shipwrecks at crushing depths. Designed to go where humans couldn't survive. The mission was supposed to be simple. Map the third chamber. Document the passages where divers had vanished. Collect water samples for analysis. Provide closure for families who'd lost loved ones in the depths. The drone descended smoothly through the first chamber. Crystal clear footage, perfect visibility, exactly what everyone expected. The second chamber was more challenging, narrower passages, reduced light, but still manageable. The equipment performed flawlessly. Then it reached the restriction leading to the third chamber, the passage that had claimed so many lives. The drone's diameter barely allowed passage, but it squeezed through successfully. Its lights pierced the darkness of the deepest accessible chamber in Jacob's Well. What those lights revealed should have been limestone formations, sediment, maybe some lost diving equipment. Instead, the drone captured footage that defied explanation. Images that marine biologists called impossible. Discoveries that shouldn't exist in a Texas limestone spring. The drone's cameras recorded everything, but analyzing the footage raised more questions than answers. At first, the footage looked normal. Limestone walls, clear water, typical cave formations. Then the drone's lights hit something that didn't belong. Something that shouldn't exist in a natural limestone cave. Structures. Not rock formations. Structures. Geometric patterns carved into the chamber walls with precision that suggested tool marks. But these carvings were beneath water level, in chambers that have been flooded for millennia. Who carved them? When? How? The drone moved closer. The structures weren't natural limestone erosion. They were deliberate construction. Passages that led deeper into the bedrock than anyone had imagined possible. Chambers that extended far beyond the mapped areas of Jacob's Well. But that wasn't the disturbing part. In one of the side chambers, the drone's lights illuminated what appeared to be artifacts. Objects that looked metallic, reflective, definitely not natural rock formations. Shapes that suggested tools, possibly weapons, certainly human-made items. Then came the moment that changed everything. As the drone maneuvered through a narrow passage, its lights swept across what appeared to be a human form. Not bones, a complete figure, apparently preserved in the cold, mineral-rich water, sitting in a carved alcove as if placed there deliberately. The drone operator tried to get closer, but the figure seemed to shift. The cameras recorded movement where there should have been only stillness. The motion sensors detected activity where nothing should have been alive. Was it a trick of the light? Water currents creating illusions? Equipment malfunction? Maybe, but the footage tells a different story. Marine biologists from 3 different universities analyzed the footage independently. Their conclusions were unanimous and terrifying. The structures in the deeper chambers show evidence of deliberate construction using tools and techniques unknown to any Native American culture in the region. Carbon dating attempts on water samples revealed organic material that predates known human habitation of North America by thousands of years. Mineral analysis showed trace elements that don't occur naturally in Texas limestone, elements that suggest the chambers connect to geological formations hundreds of miles away. But it was the motion analysis that raised the most disturbing questions. Frame-by-frame examination of the footage revealed consistent movement patterns in areas where no currents should exist. Objects that appeared to shift position between camera sweeps. Shadows that moved independently of the drone's lighting. Underwater archaeologists compared the carved structures to known cave art and ancient construction techniques. The geometric patterns don't match any documented human culture. The precision suggests advanced tools, possibly metal implements, but the dating puts construction long before metalworking reached North America. The figure in the alcove posed the greatest mystery. Anthropologists studying the footage couldn't determine if they were looking at preserved human remains, sophisticated sculptures, or something else entirely. The proportions seemed human, but slightly off. Too tall, limbs too long, skull shape subtly different. Computer enhancement of the footage revealed details invisible to the naked eye. Details that made the analysis teams recommend immediate cessation of all diving activities at Jacob's Well. When portions of the drone footage leaked online, the reaction was immediate and worldwide. Cave diving communities shared the videos millions of times within hours. Marine biology forums crashed from traffic. Archaeological societies called emergency meetings. But it wasn't just the scientific community that took notice. Government agencies began asking questions. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department suddenly increased security around Jacob's Well. Federal agencies that normally don't involve themselves in local cave systems started conducting their own investigations. International experts flew in from around the world to examine the footage. Deep-sea exploration teams from Norway, cave archaeologists from France, underwater robotics specialists from Japan, all reached similar conclusions. The structures in Jacob's Well's deepest chambers represent something unprecedented in underground archaeology. Religious groups latched onto the biblical connections, claiming the footage proved supernatural forces at work. Paranormal investigators descended on the site, bringing their own equipment and theories. New Age communities declared Jacob's Well a portal to other dimensions. But it was the reaction of local Native American tribes that proved most disturbing. Tribal elders who had been silent for decades suddenly came forward with oral traditions they'd never shared with outsiders. Stories about the deep chambers. Warnings about things that lived in the underwater darkness. Pleas to seal the well permanently. The footage had awakened something that had been sleeping for generations. The Tonkawa tribe had lived in the Texas Hill Country for over 1,000 years before European contact. Their oral traditions, carefully preserved through generations, contained specific warnings about the spring that would become known as Jacob's Well. They called it the Hungry Water. According to tribal historians, their ancestors believed the spring was a doorway, not just to underground rivers, but to a realm where different rules applied, where beings from before the current world still dwelt in the deep places. The tribal warnings were specific and detailed. Never descend beyond where sunlight reaches. Never disturb the carved stones in the deep chambers. Never remove anything from the underwater passages. And above all, never stay in the depths after the water begins to sing. Early anthropologists dismissed these as typical Native American nature myths, but the drone footage revealed carved stones in the exact locations the tribal stories described. Symbols that matched petroglyphs found at ancient Native American sites across the Southwest, sites that were supposedly unconnected to Texas Hill Country tribes. Most disturbing were the tribal accounts of the Watchers in the deep places, beings that looked human but lived beneath the water, entities that could preserve themselves in the cold springs for centuries, waiting. The oral traditions claimed these beings would sometimes emerge to interact with humans, but always for purposes that served their own mysterious agenda. The tribes had developed elaborate rituals for approaching the spring safely. Offerings were made. Specific prayers were recited. Certain times of year were considered dangerous for any water contact. These practices continued until white settlement disrupted tribal culture in the 1800s. Now, over a century later, the drone footage seemed to confirm what the tribal elders had been trying to warn everyone about. Within weeks of the footage leak, Jacob's Well was quietly closed to all diving activities. Official statements cited routine geological survey work and water quality concerns. But the security measures told a different story. Federal agencies that normally deal with national security issues became involved in what should have been a local parks matter. Geologists with security clearances arrived to conduct classified surveys. Equipment trucks with no identifying markings appeared at the site. The original drone footage disappeared from most online platforms within days. Copyright claims and technical violations were cited, but the speed and coordination of the removals suggested official pressure. Enhanced versions of the video that showed the most disturbing details vanished completely. Scientists who had publicly analyzed the footage received visits from federal officials. Research was suddenly classified. University studies were quietly terminated. Marine biologists who had been enthusiastic about the discovery stopped returning phone calls. Local authorities were instructed to refer all media inquiries to federal agencies. Tour operators lost their permits. Even recreational swimming was eventually restricted to daylight hours with mandatory supervision. The official explanation remained ongoing geological research, but the security measures resembled those used for hazardous material containment. The message was clear. Whatever the drone had discovered in Jacob's Well's depths was too dangerous for public knowledge. But some footage survived. Enhanced versions continue circulating on encrypted platforms. Frame-by-frame analysis by independent researchers reveals details that explain why authorities moved so quickly to suppress the original videos. The structures in the deep chambers aren't just ancient, they're functional. Water flow patterns suggest the carved passages serve as a sophisticated filtration and distribution system connecting to underground rivers across central Texas. This isn't primitive cave art. It's advanced hydraulic engineering. The metallic objects show signs of composition unknown to current materials science. Spectral analysis of reflected light suggests alloys that shouldn't exist in nature and weren't developed by human technology until the past century. Yet these objects appear to have been underwater for millennia. Most disturbing are the enhanced images of the figure in the alcove. Computer analysis reveals details invisible in the original footage. The proportions aren't quite human. The preservation is too perfect for natural mummification, and in several frames the eyes appear to be open and tracking the drone's movement. Independent researchers comparing the Jacob's Well footage to similar discoveries worldwide have found disturbing parallels. Underwater structures in cenotes throughout Mexico, carved chambers in flooded caves across the American Southwest, always the same geometric patterns, always the same advanced engineering, always the same official suppression of investigation. The pattern suggests Jacob's Well isn't unique. It's part of a network of similar sites that authorities prefer to keep hidden from public knowledge. We're almost at the end, but before we reveal the terrifying truth, hit that like button if this investigation is blowing your mind. The truth about what the drone discovered in Jacob's Well goes beyond ancient mysteries or government cover-ups. The footage reveals evidence of an active, functioning system that has been operating beneath our feet for thousands of years. The carved chambers aren't ruins, they're occupied. The movement captured in the drone footage wasn't water currents or equipment malfunction. Something alive dwells in those depths. Something that has been watching, waiting, using the spring as both shelter and hunting ground. The missing divers weren't victims of cave diving accidents. They were taken. The partial remains found miles away in connected cave systems weren't from drowning victims. They were from something that feeds in the underwater darkness and discards what it doesn't need. The tribal warnings weren't primitive superstition. They were factual accounts passed down by survivors who understood what lived in the deep water. The rituals and restrictions weren't religious practices. They were safety protocols developed over centuries of deadly contact. And Jacob's Well isn't the only location. The underground network extends throughout Texas, connecting to similar sites across the Southwest. Each location has its own history of unexplained disappearances. Each site has its own local legends about things in the water. Each place has been quietly restricted or monitored by authorities who know exactly what they're protecting the public from. The drone footage from Jacob's Well represents the first clear documentation of something humanity has been avoiding for generations. Something that explains why certain places remain dangerous despite our technological advances. Something that prefers the deep, dark places where humans rarely venture. But now we've ventured there with our cameras and our lights. We've disturbed something that had remained hidden for centuries. And the increased security around Jacob's Well suggests that our curiosity may have awakened things that should have stayed asleep. The drone brought back footage of humanity's worst nightmare. Confirmation that we're not alone in the places we thought were empty. And now that we've seen them, they've seen us too. If this investigation opened your eyes to what's really hiding beneath our world, subscribe for more suppressed discoveries. Share this with others brave enough to handle the truth. Like if you think humanity deserves to know what's been watching us from the deep places. Jacob's Well keeps its deadliest secrets in the chambers where light has never reached. But thanks to one brave drone, those secrets are finally coming to the surface.